The dust settled, but the terror did not. In Genghis Khan's shadow, life was a gamble, especially for women. Not just spoils of war, but a chilling currency. Their bodies, their futures, traded like goods, not humans. This was Genghis Khan's darkest pact, the systematic trade of women, bought and sold like cattle to secure an empire built on blood. It's a truth history often whispers, but rarely confronts. Before we continue, help me reach 1,000 subscribers so we can keep exposing history's darkest secrets. Hit subscribe and like right now. What time are you watching this? Morning, afternoon, or night? Comment below. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. What you're about to hear isn't just another tale of Mongol conquest. It's a story about how absolute power can turn people into pawns, and how the dream of empire were built on the silent suffering of countless women. The methods Genghis Khan used to hold his empire together were as brutal as his battles. Imagine a world where empires rise and fall in a single bloody battle. This was the world of Central Asia before Genghis Khan. Many small tribes fought each other constantly. Life was hard. There was always war. No one tribe was strong enough to bring peace or order. The land was wide and open. Travel was difficult. People lived simple lives, always ready to fight. Their homes were often tense, easy to move when enemies came. They rode horses and hunted animals. Their lives were about survival. This endless fighting made everyone weak. No one could build anything big or lasting. Many people died young. Famine and sickness were common. The future was always unsure. Then came Genghis Khan. He was born as Temüjin. He brought these fierce, warring tribes together. He did this through a mix of clever plans and terrible violence. He made them all follow one leader, himself. He was a brilliant soldier. He made a monstrous war machine. His army was like nothing anyone had seen before. It was fast and very strong. His horsemen moved like the wind. They used bows and arrows with great skill. They swept across Asia and into Europe. They shook kingdoms that had stood for hundreds of years. Cities burned. Whole populations were killed. Fear spread far and wide. No one felt safe from the Mongol horsemen. His empire grew very fast. It stretched over huge lands. It was much bigger than any empire before it. It reached from the Pacific Ocean to Eastern Europe. This was a massive area. Different peoples, different cultures, different ways of life were all brought under his rule. He created the largest land empire in history. But how did he keep such a vast, brutal empire together once the fighting stopped? This was his biggest challenge. It was easy to conquer land with an army. It was much harder to rule it peacefully. His empire was full of different groups. Many people did not want to be part of it. Rebellions could start anywhere, at any time. Local rulers often hated the Mongols. They waited for a chance to fight back. Genghis Khan needed a way to make them loyal. He needed to make sure they would not rise up. He needed connections that would last. He could not keep fighting all the time. War cost too much. It used up too many men. He needed a different kind of power. He needed a way to bind people to his rule without always using his sword. He needed a system that would make alliances strong. This was the problem he faced, and his solution was very dark. Genghis Khan was more than just a brilliant general. He was a master planner. He saw everything as a tool. He saw land as something to take. He saw horses as animals to ride and fight with. And he saw people as tools too, especially women. He looked at women from conquered noble families. He looked at women from allied tribes. These women were not just prizes from war. They were not just for pleasure. They were part of a darker plan. They were a key part of his system to hold his empire together. Genghis Khan himself knew about hardship. He had a hard childhood. His father was killed. His family was left to starve. He learned early that trust was rare. He learned that survival needed strong bonds. He understood that people could be used for bigger goals. His own mother, Alun, played an important role in his early life. She taught him about survival and leadership. He saw how women could hold families and tribes together. He decided he would use this power for his empire. He saw that women could be used to make peace where there had been war. These women were not just prizes. They were part of a darker plan. They were pieces on a chessboard. They were valuable, more valuable than gold sometimes. Genghis Khan did not care about their feelings. He did not care about their happiness. Their lives were not their own. They belonged to the empire. Their bodies and futures were not for them to decide. They were for the Khan to use. This way of thinking was common in many empires long ago. Women were often used to make political ties. But Genghis Khan made this practice much bigger and more organized. He made it a central part of his rule. It was a cold and calculating system. It worked like a machine. Each woman had a job. Her job was to connect one powerful family to another. Her job was to make sure one ruler would not betray another. Her job was to spread the Mongol blow, the old line. To stop rebellions and make new friends, Khan needed strong bonds. He needed trust that would last. His empire was always growing. It stretched over vast distances. It was hard to keep control over every small king or chief. They often had their own ideas. They might try to rebel when his army moved to another place. He needed a way to make sure they stayed loyal. He knew that gold could buy loyalty. But gold was only good for a short time. People would take the gold, then betray him later. Gifts were also temporary. A gift could be forgotten. A simple promise could be broken. These things were not strong enough. They could not hold a huge empire together for long. He needed something stronger. He needed something that would make people think twice before fighting him. He needed something that tied families together. Human lives could secure loyalty forever. This was the powerful idea behind his dark trade. Marriage was a very old way to make alliances. When two families married, their blood mixed. Their children were related to both sides. This made the bond much stronger. It made it harder to break. If a ruler married his daughter to a conquered chief, that chief became part of Khan's family. He became a son-in-law. It was harder for a son-in-law to rebel against his father-in-law. It was a matter of honor and blood. This created a web of relationships. It was a network of family ties that spread across the empire. It was a way to make peace through forced connections. These connections lasted for generations. They were much stronger than any written treaty. They were harder to break than any simple promise. This was a very smart, very cruel strategy. This led to a grim system, a trade unlike any other. It was not about buying goods. It was about buying peace and power with human lives. The system became very clear. When Genghis Khan conquered a new land, he would demand daughters from the local rulers. Or if he wanted to make an alliance, he would offer his own daughters or granddaughters in marriage. These women were not asked if they wanted to marry. Their wishes did not matter. They were simply moved from one place to another. They were given from one family to another. They were living bridges between enemy lands or new friends. It was a cold, hard rule. It showed that humans were just tools for the empire. Women, sometimes very young girls, were given away or taken by force. This was a common practice. When an army conquered a city, many women were taken. Some were killed. Some were kept as spoils of war. But under Genghis Khan, many were also specifically chosen. They were chosen for their family name. They were chosen for their beauty or their royal blood. They were often daughters of kings or chiefs. These women were important. They were not just random people, they were gifts to seal treaties. A Mongol leader would offer his daughter to a powerful ally. This was a sign of great trust and friendship. It meant that their families would now be connected by blood. It was a deep promise. It showed that the two leaders were serious about their alliance. It made their alliance much stronger. These women were also payment to keep peace. When a land was conquered, the people might want to rebel. Genghis Khan would take daughters from the local nobles. He would then marry them to his own generals or sons. This was a way to bind the conquered people to the Mongols. It forced them to accept the new rulers. If a chief's daughter was married to a Mongol prince, that chief would be less likely to fight. His own daughter was now part of the Mongol family. He would not want to harm her. This stopped many rebellions before they even started. It was a way to control people without constantly using soldiers. It was a form of soft power, but it was very brutal for the women involved. These women moved from one ruler to another. They often traveled very far. They might go from their homeland to a distant part of the empire. The journey itself could be long and hard. They would ride horses or carts for weeks or months. They left everything they knew behind: their homes, their families, their friends, their culture. They were going to a new land. They would meet a new husband. They would live a new life. They would learn new customs and a new language. This was a huge change. It was a great loss for them. They were alone in a new world. They had to adapt, or they would not survive. Their personal feelings, their wills, simply did not matter. No one asked them what they wanted. No one asked if they loved their new husband. They were told who to marry. They were told where to live. Their lives were controlled by men, by the empire's needs. They had no say in their own fate. Their personal desires were not important. Only the empire's stability mattered. These women became wives, concubines, or even mothers to future leaders. They entered new families, often in strange lands. Their status could vary. Some became favored wives, some were just one among many. But their main job was often the same: to have children. Sons were especially important. Sons would continue the family line. Sons would link the two families even more. They were forced to adapt to new lands, new families. They had to learn new languages. They had to learn new customs. They had to wear new clothes. They had to eat new foods. Everything was different from their old life. Their old names might even be changed. Their lives were erased. They had to become someone new. They had to forget their past. They had to serve their new husband and his family. This was a great burden. Yet, within this tragedy, some found power in unexpected ways. These women were not just helpless victims, they were often smart and strong. They had to be to survive. Some learned to speak the Mongol language. Some learned to understand the Mongol way of thinking. They became important in their new households. They could sometimes influence their husbands or their sons. They could become trusted advisors. They could help make peace between their old family and their new one. They could protect their own people. For example, some Mongol queens, called Khatans, became very powerful. They ruled parts of the empire when their husbands died. They used their intelligence and their strength to keep power. They showed that even in a harsh system, women could make their own path. They could find a way to lead, but this was rare. For most, life was about quiet survival. This trade created powerful family ties across Khan's empire. These marriages built strong connections. They were like a giant web covering the empire. If a Mongol prince married a princess from a conquered land, that land became part of the family. The local ruler became a relative. This made it much harder to fight against the Mongols. It meant that the conquered people had a direct link to the central power. It also made the Mongols seem less like foreign invaders. It made them seem more like family members. This helped bring peace to many areas. It made the empire more stable. It was a very effective way to rule. These family ties lasted for many years. They passed from parents to children. It spread Mongol influence and bloodlines. Mongol customs and ways of life spread through these women. When a Mongol princess married into a foreign court, she brought her culture with her. She might bring Mongol clothes, food, or traditions. Her children would be half Mongol. They would have Mongol blood. They would learn about Mongol ways from their mother. This helped to spread Mongol culture far and wide. It also spread the bloodline of Genghis Khan. His descendants became rulers in many different lands. They sat on thrones in Persia, China, and Russia. This created a new ruling class. This ruling class was tied directly to Genghis Khan. It was a family of rulers. This made the empire feel more united. It made everyone feel part of one big family, even if they were far apart. This mixing of cultures changed many societies. It was a new way of life for many people. It was a melting pot of different traditions, but it also erased old identities. The culture of the conquered people became mixed with Mongol culture. Some old ways were lost forever. New ways took their place. Local languages might be forgotten. New languages might be learned. The old identity of a tribe or a kingdom slowly disappeared. A new, bigger, mixed identity took its place. This was a cruel foundation for one of history's largest empires. It was built on the pain of many women. It was built on their forced marriages. It was built on their lost lives. Their suffering was the price of the empire's unity. Their bodies were the glue that held the vast lands together. Genghis Khan is remembered for his military genius. He was a master of war. His name brings to mind brave warriors and huge battles. He is also remembered for his vast conquests. He built an empire that covered a huge part of the world. People study his battle plans even today. They talk about how smart he was as a leader. They talk about how he united tribes. They talk about how he changed the map of the world. These stories are exciting. They are full of power and glory. They are about men fighting and conquering. They are about building a new world. This is the history we often hear. This is the history that is written in big books, but the silent suffering of countless women remains a dark stain on his legacy. Their stories are not often told. Their names are not remembered. They were not generals or kings. They were just women. They were bought and sold. They were given away like goods. They had no say in their lives. They suffered quietly. Their pain was not recorded in battle histories. Their tears did not make headlines, but their silent suffering was a huge part of the empire. It was the foundation that kept the empire strong. It was the unseen cost of Genghis Khan's greatness. This hidden story reveals the true, chilling cost of his ambition. It shows that empire building is not just about battles and heroes. It is also about the quiet pain of many people. It is about lives that were destroyed for the sake of power. It shows that even the greatest leaders can have a very dark side. It reminds us that history is often much more complex and much sadder than it seems. This truth makes us look at Genghis Khan in a new light. We see not just the conqueror, but also the man who used human beings as currency. This was not just politics. It was a transaction of human lives, binding an empire with silent suffering. If this story shocked you, help me reach 1,000 subscribers by subscribing now, and tell me in the comments which royal scandal or dark historical trade you want uncovered next. This truth makes us look at Genghis Khan in a new light. We see not just the conqueror, but also the man who used human beings as currency. This was not a system of emotion or love. It was a cold calculation. Genghis Khan understood that lasting power needed more than just swords. It needed deep connections. It needed loyalty that ran in the veins. He knew that a family bond was stronger than any army. It was stronger than any treasure. This understanding made him truly powerful. It allowed him to build something that lasted far beyond his lifetime. His empire was vast, stretching over mountains and deserts. It included many different peoples. Each group had its own language and its own leaders. Keeping them all under control was a massive job. Imagine trying to manage such a huge area. His generals could not be everywhere at once. Soldiers could not guard every village. There simply were not enough Mongol warriors to do it. He needed a smarter way to rule. He needed a way for people to want to stay loyal, or at least make it very hard for them to rebel. He used the strongest social bond known to man: family. His dark trade was actually a brilliant political tool. It was a way to make alliances unbreakable. It was a way to force peace where only war had been. It was about creating a new kind of empire. This empire was not just built on land. It was built on blood ties. It was built on a network of marriages. These marriages connected families across vast distances. They connected rulers to the central Mongol power. When a local chief married a Mongol princess, he became a son to Genghis Khan. This was a powerful title. It meant he had new duties and new loyalties. He was now part of the Khan's own family. Breaking this bond was a huge act of dishonor. It meant turning against your new family. It meant risking the lives of your children who had Mongol blood. It was a very strong deterrent. These alliances often came with special perks. The new family members might get trade benefits. They might get military support. They would be part of the powerful Mongol network. They would gain from the empire's peace. This system was far more stable than simply conquering lands. Conquered lands often rebelled later, but family members were less likely to fight back. They had too much to lose. The demands for daughters were precise. Genghis Khan did not just take any, Woman. He specifically sought out women from noble families. He wanted daughters of kings, princes, and powerful chiefs. These women carried high status. Their bloodlines were important. Their families held power in their own regions. Marrying them into the Mongol family brought that power under Mongol influence. Sometimes, a Mongol general would arrive in a newly conquered town. He would demand a certain number of women. These were not always for marriage. Some were for other roles in the Mongol court. But the most important ones were selected for political marriages. They were chosen carefully. Their family background was checked. Their worth as a political pawn was decided. It was a cold, hard decision. The negotiations for these gifts were not really negotiations. They were demands. The conquered family had little choice. Refusing Genghis Khan could mean total destruction. It could mean their entire family would be wiped out. So fathers handed over their daughters. Brothers watched their sisters leave. They did so with heavy hearts. But they knew it was the only way to save their people. It was the only way to survive. These women would then begin their long, lonely journey. They might travel thousands of miles, across wide steppes, through thick forests, over towering mountains. They often had no idea what awaited them. They would ride in decorated carts or on horseback. A Mongol escort would guard them. They were precious cargo, but not in a loving way. They were valuable property, a living contract. As they traveled, they left behind everything. The familiar sights and sounds of their childhood faded away. The faces of their loved ones became distant memories. A new, uncertain future lay ahead. The ceremonies, if there were any, were often quick. They were not about celebrating love. They were about sealing a deal. They were about formally joining two powerful lines. Once they arrived, these women entered a new world. They often faced cultural shock. Their new homes might be lavish palaces or simple felt tents. But either way, they were foreign. They had to learn new languages, like Mongolian or Persian. They had to understand new customs. What was polite in their old home might be rude here. They had to quickly learn the rules. They might have to wear different clothes. They might have to eat strange foods. Their old gods might not be honored. Everything they knew about daily life was suddenly turned upside down. Their primary duty was often to produce children. Sons were especially desired. A son born to a Mongol prince and a foreign princess was a powerful symbol. He was a living bridge between two worlds. This son would have the blood of both families. He would be raised within the Mongol world, but he would also carry the heritage of his mother's people. This made him a powerful tool for ruling. These women often lived in huge households. They might be one of many wives or concubines. Competition was fierce. They had to learn to navigate complex family politics. Their survival depended on it. Their emotions were often ignored. Their individual needs were not important. The needs of the empire came first. They were expected to be strong, to be silent, and to serve their new masters. Yet, despite this harsh reality, some women found strength. They were survivors. They learned to adapt. They developed sharp minds and strong wills. They found ways to assert their own quiet power. Some women rose through the ranks of their new households. They became trusted advisors to their husbands. They understood both the Mongol ways and the ways of their birth families. This made them valuable. They could speak for their old people. They could explain cultural differences. They could help prevent misunderstandings. They acted as unofficial diplomats, working to keep the peace. These women, sometimes called Khatun's, were especially powerful. When a Mongol ruler died, his Khatun often took charge. She would rule the lands until a new leader was chosen. This was a huge responsibility. These powerful women managed vast territories. They commanded armies. They made important decisions. They issued decrees. They showed that even within this brutal system, women could achieve great influence. For example, Turagena Khatun ruled the Mongol Empire for several years after her husband, Genghis Khan, died. She was a strong leader. She skillfully guided the empire through a tough time. She proved women could lead. Another example is Sorghaghtani Beki. She was a Christian Nestorian princess who married a son of Genghis Khan. She was incredibly intelligent and wise. Her 4 sons all became great leaders, including Mongol Khan and Kublai Khan. She was known for her clever political decisions. She protected her sons and their future. She taught them how to rule. She used her position to shape the future of the Mongol Empire. These women were truly remarkable. They were not just victims. They were often crucial players. They influenced decisions. They shaped the lives of their children. They sometimes kept their original cultures alive through their children. This constant mixing of people brought many changes. Mongol customs spread widely. So did technologies and ideas. The empire became a huge melting pot of cultures. It led to amazing new discoveries. For example, the Mongols were great at moving goods and knowledge. They built a system of roads and postal stations. This allowed trade and ideas to flow freely. East met West in new ways. Art styles mixed. Scientific knowledge moved across borders. New foods and spices were introduced. The world became more connected, largely because of the Mongol Empire. But this came at a price. While new cultures were born, old ones sometimes faded. The unique ways of certain tribes disappeared. Their languages might be forgotten. Their ancient traditions might be replaced. The distinct identity of many groups was slow, rely absorbed into the larger Mongol world. This was especially true for the ruling families. They became more like the Mongols. They became less like their old selves. This cultural shift was a direct result of the dark trade. These women were the carriers of culture. They were the ones who blended traditions. They were the ones who bore children with mixed heritage. So the very glue that held the empire together also slowly changed it. It made it more unified, but it also erased some of the beautiful diversity that existed before. It was a complex and often sad process. The legacy of Genghis Khan is often seen as a tale of military genius. We hear about his clever battle plans, we learn about his courage and his vision. We see him as a man who changed the world map forever. Historians write about his reforms. They talk about how he organized his army. They talk about the laws he created, like the Yasa. These stories focus on his achievements. They focus on his triumphs. But behind these grand narratives lies a hidden truth. The truth of countless women whose lives were sacrificed. Women who were forced into marriages. Women who became political pawns. Their stories are not sung in epic poems. Their names are not always found in history books. They built no monuments. They led no armies. Yet, they were the silent architects of the empire's unity. Their suffering was not accidental. It was a deliberate part of Genghis Khan's plan. He used their lives to secure his power. He used their bodies to bind his empire. This was his true, chilling genius. It teaches us that even the most celebrated figures in history have dark sides. It shows us that great empires are often built on quiet injustices. It reminds us to always look deeper. History is not just about battles and kings. It's also about the human cost. It's about the everyday lives of ordinary people. It's about the hidden sacrifices that allow power to thrive. The story of Genghis Khan's darkest trade forces us to confront this reality. It makes us question the glory. It makes us see the pain. It makes us remember the voiceless. These women deserve to be remembered, not just as victims, but as vital parts of history. Their strength, their resilience, their forced adaptability, it all contributed to the shape of the world. Their lives were not their own, but their silent suffering forged an empire. It was a cruel pact, but an effective one. It shaped the future of Asia and beyond. It changed the world. This hidden aspect of Genghis Khan's reign is a powerful reminder. It tells us that power, especially absolute power, can twist humanity. It can turn people into mere tools. It shows that the grand dreams of empire were often built on the broken dreams of individuals, especially the dreams of women who had no say. Their lives were dictated by the brutal needs of a conqueror. So when we think of Genghis Khan, let us remember his military might. But let us also remember the cost. Let us remember the silent suffering. Let us remember the women, bought and sold like cattle. This was not just politics, it was a transaction of human lives binding an empire with silent suffering. If this story shocked you, help me reach 1,000 subscribers by subscribing now, and tell me in the comments which royal scandal or dark historical trade you want uncovered next.